Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Happy May! I did not upload for 2 months again, my bad on that. I think it was 2 months, I'm not sure. But it is now May, and May is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And so I just wanted to showcase some of mine and my friends' experiences growing up Asian American. So, the basics first. I just asked what their ethnicity was, and the friends that I did ask to fill out this form, majority of them are East Asian, with mostly a majority of Chinese Americans, because I did ask a lot of my friends from Chinese Saturday school to fill out this form. So keep that in mind, and maybe your experiences are different. Some other ethnicities such as Filipino, Vietnamese, Pakistani, as well as some others who are mixed. As for citizenship, I did ask if they were born in the country they live in now or if they moved. And the majority of them were born in the country they live in now, with some people having been adopted or have immigrated with their family. So with that overview of who filled out this form, let's get on to the main questions. So the first question that I asked was, who are some Asian Americans in media that you have looked or look up to? Representation in media is very important. It helps to relate to characters on the screen as well as become more proud of our heritage. Actresses like Awkwafina, Gemma Chan, Arden Cho, Sandra Oh, Constance Wu, the cast of Fresh Off the Boat, Tina from Glee, comedians like Hassan Minhaj and Ken Jeong, those on social media such as YouTube or Wong Fu, Ryan Higa, Canto Mando, Jimmy Zhang, Fruity Poppin, and Bretman Rock. Athletes like Jeremy Lin and Nathan Chen, and K-pop stars like BTS and Blackpink. There's obviously a longer list or a shorter list depending on who, because while I did have this list of some people, there were also some responses that said that they didn't really have Asians they could look up to. Many of these actors and media stars are very recent stars that we can now look up to in what seems like our older years. But growing up as a kid, there was rarely any representation. So it's really nice that in recent years that this list of people we can now look up to has grown. I personally and some of my other friends have looked up to Wong Fu, Ryan Higa, and Canto Mando, and all those YouTubers on the internet for a long time. Okay, so for the next question I asked was, what are some stereotypes you've heard or have been affected by? And while I could read every single one of these responses, here are just a few. Cat, dog, bat eater. All Asians are smart and good at math. Being called Ching Chong or Ling Ling. Funny looking eyes. And all Asians have pale skin. As I scroll through and look at all these responses, they're all pretty much the same. And while it may seem like a quote-unquote good stereotype, there is no such thing as a good stereotype. All stereotypes are still stereotyping. With that idea of Asians being smarter, just being naturally smarter, especially for those Asians who happen to not be as smart, naturally smart, or not be as good at math. It's this pressure that is created from a general stereotype that they can't fix or kind of impossible to disprove. I myself have been affected with these. I've been called names, or eyes have been pulled back, or asked if, how do you say this in whatever language? Like, can you speak Chinese? How do you say this in Chinese? And then proceed to mock what I say, which honestly did affect me growing up. And it's not something that you can just say, oh, deal with it. It's something that shouldn't be happening, and I hope in the future people learn that it's not. So the next question I asked was, have you ever been embarrassed to be Asian, or any specific stories? There are some common ones about food being brought to lunch in school and being made fun of because it was smelly or different, or those stereotypes of Indians eating only curry, or rude things like that. Some people were even bullied for just being Asian. But it's good that many of these people, that as I look at these responses, many of these people are not embarrassed to be Asian, or no longer are embarrassed to be Asian. Personally, when I ask this question, I'm going to be honest, when I was younger, I was definitely not fully embracing my own culture. There was definitely a point in time where I wanted to be white. Because of the lack of representation, it was something that as a kid, you're directly influenced by. And while I'm no longer embarrassed to be Asian, I'm Chinese American and proud of that, it's a very interesting question to ask, especially for those who did not grow up with many Asians in the community. On top of that question, I asked, have you ever felt not Asian enough? Many of these responses commented on the fact that they cannot speak their language, or because they don't fit the standard Asian American experiences through grades or school. One response that I wanted to point out is this one. To the question, they said, occasionally, when you grow up in a predominantly white society, their thinking slowly molds your own thinking, which most times conflicts with your family's thinking. Then they bring out the "that's so American" and the banana analogy, and then big sad. I've definitely used the word banana before. Banana, yellow on the outside, white on the inside. It's a very negative comment and degrading comment, especially to other Asian Americans who you say that aren't Asian enough because they don't speak their language, or they prefer pizza over a dish from their culture, or they were just adopted into a white American family and didn't have that outlet of Asian influence. Following up on that question, I did ask if they were fluent in their language. If I do answer this myself, I am definitely not fluent. I can definitely speak, but my written skills and reading skills are very simple. With the help of Google Translate, I am able to hold a conversation. And the many responses are similar to mine, where either they're fluent in speaking but not in writing, or they're not, and many of them do want to learn. Last question, just for general Asians, is what's your favorite thing about being Asian? My favorite response out of these is, my favorite thing about being Asian is the understanding that I have for other ethnic and minority cultures. I can understand American ideals, but I can also understand many Asian norms and expectation. It allows me to stay open-minded and to learn about both sides of me. I really like this response because as an Asian American, you're revealed to both sides, Western and Eastern culture. So being able to have an outlet on both sides allows you to have a very open mind about certain things, such as standards in education or priorities in mental health. And obviously the food is a very important thing. About the food, one person says that their favorite thing is definitely the food. Chinese culture is ingrained in our dishes. Many meals that I have at home are Chinese food. I find it fascinating that different areas of Chinese have very different food styles. For example, Sichuan is known for the numbing spiciness of their dishes from peppercorns and other flavorings. I remember one of the first lessons I learned in Chinese school was actually about the different methods of cooking and different terminology in Chinese. It just shows how significant food is. In different regions, there are different foods and different cultures and different practices and traditions, and it's really interesting to learn about all of them, especially as an Asian American, because it allows you to expand your viewpoint of what food is and how things can be prepared, which is definitely, yeah, as a favorite thing about being Asian, it's definitely in the top 10. This form was filled out last year by 45 people. Actually 43 because 2 people filled out twice. But this year I wanted to ask a follow-up question. How has the past year affected you? And has your race been a reason for these incidents? 2020 to 2021, especially during COVID, with not just hate crimes, but walking out in the street and being racially profiled a lot more than you would usually. So I just wanted to read some responses. In the past year, I have noticed more small acts of discrimination that are likely out of unknowing bias. A year ago, I would have figured it was something in my behavior that had to change, so I should be treated equally. With time, I realized how many people had an implicit bias that impacts how they treat others. This year has been infuriating. Not only were there several attacks on AAPI, but also the fact that bystanders did not take any action to try and stop the attacks. Absolutely disappointing. I believe there was like a 80% increase in incidents involving AAPI. Great to know this year we are using our voices. Hopefully we can incite change or at least continue to advocate for it. This year has been harder than most years. There has always been racism, stereotyping, prejudice in the past. However, this year there have been an increase in hate crimes, murders, and racism because of the pandemic. The increase of hate crimes is honestly scary, causing more stress. Because of the pandemic, my parents had to close for 3 months, leading to financial burden and worry. Even after going back to work, I am scared either that they might catch COVID or experience hate crime. As a college student, it also has been hard as a first-generation low-income student to transition to college in a pandemic. The past year has been a scary one. I remember when the pandemic first broke out, there were a few comments regarding the coronavirus said to me, such as, "Oh my God, do you have COVID?" or "Watch out, she'll get you sick." I tried to stay out of everyone's way. I always wore a mask and tried to keep distance when I could. Violence against Asians has continued to rise, and it makes it scary to go out in places such as cities since their hate crime rates are so high. Even going to the mall or one of my soccer games, I get nervous someone is going to say something to me because I am Asian American. The past year has honestly sucked, and it's sad to see how people cope with issues such as this one. This year has definitely been rough, and even if it had nothing to do with race, it has definitely been tough, just mentally. Seeing hate crimes of people in your Asian American community is very mentally draining. And while I am lucky enough to not be directly hate crime, I have been definitely racially profiled. If you are not Asian American, I hope you learned something from this video. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave comments. I'm totally and completely open to any comments or any misunderstandings that this video could have provided. Race and stereotyping and prejudice is not a political issue. So leave your comments below, and even if anything I said was wrong, or you don't believe in the same thing, feel free to explain why, and I hope that I can understand and we can get onto common ground. Since it is Asian American Pacific Islander Month, I wanted to shine light on more Asian American experiences, because there are a lot of us. And while it is only a few of just my friends living in a specific area, there are so many more experiences that I am not able to cover. As an East Asian American, I still have the privilege of having somewhat more representation, especially since I'm Chinese. So if you do want to help, I will link some other videos in the description below, as well as some other resources. Thank you so much for watching, and while I don't believe that I can truly educate you on everything, I hope you got a little bit of insight through this video.